This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Good morning, I'm Justin Warmoth. As we get into the 2021 holiday season, there's no shortage of warnings about, well, shortages. The global supply chain is a logistical nightmare right now. From port congestion, fewer truck drivers, to manufacturing delays overseas, so many industries are feeling the effects from this crisis. This morning, Ray Agravir, the president and CEO of Custom Metal Designs in Orange County, is here to break down the supply chain issue and how the bottleneck is impacting his business. First off, I just want you to explain to our viewers what Custom Metal Designs does, how long you guys have been in Central Florida, and what you provide for companies.
Sure. Yeah, Custom Metal Designs is a manufacturer of industrial automation equipment and things that make factories run more efficiently and effectively, basically. We have been in Central Florida for 50 years. Next year will be our 50th anniversary as an organization. So we're excited to kind of celebrate that milestone here in Central Florida. We're actually in Oakland, Florida, which is right in between Winter Garden and Claremont. So, we got a nice facility here where we do this work nationwide. Custom Metal Designs, we do industrial robotics, collaborative robotics, just anything you can imagine to make a process flow more efficiently and effectively. That's what we do from A to Z, from design, concept, manufacturing, assembly, installation, and support.
So this slowdown, this supply chain issue that's happening, I know it's complicated. But can you explain what's happening and how you are directly impacted by it?
Sure. Basically, everything has become more complicated. So just running the operation is just a logistical, nightmare, to be honest, currently, because things and materials that we used to be able to source in a matter of days or a couple of weeks are now taking up to 30 weeks. So there's certain motors and certain pieces of electronic components that go into our machinery that, again, we used to be able to get into the facility within a matter of days or weeks, and now it's taking months. And even then, a lot of the times, those dates aren't being hit. They're because there's just no certainty of when those items are going to get to the ports, when they're going to get offloaded to the ports, get sent out to distribution centers, and ultimately get into our hands. So, that's caused a tremendous disruption in our ability to hit timelines and hit deadlines to our customers, which then has a snowballing effect, right? Because, we're seeing the shortages that are being created and the price pressures, quite frankly, that are happening because of that. Everything is costing more. And when you really start drilling in, that's why, the global supply chain, it really hampers everything. And, things just are going to increase in price, and we're all going to feel that as consumers.
It seems simple on paper. Take this box to this place, get it on this ship, get it on this. It seems simple, but it's really complex, as you touched on. And it seems like it's almost like a house of cards situation here, where if something happens, it affects the next thing, it affects the next thing, and it just snowballs out of control. Is that the best way to describe it?
Yes, and certainly there's things that can be done to try to mitigate, right? There's ways that you can try to make your supply chain more resilient. We as a small manufacturer are buying materials way in advance now, in hopes of having, some materials available when future builds come. So, there are things that can be done and should be done. But again, there's only so much of that organizations can do, especially the small to mid-sized organizations, which, talking about the population of manufacturers in Central Florida and even in the state of Florida, 80% of those manufacturers that reside in our state are under 20 employees. So there's only so much capital available and so many things that they can do to try to bolster their own internal, supply chain and make themselves more resilient. But that's certainly something that we need to look at a state level, at a national level, is how do we make our supply chains more resilient? And I think some of the things that we can do is the onshoring, stop so much reliance on getting products from overseas, and bring some of that manufacturing back to America. And here in Florida, we have a great business climate. We have a lot of manufacturers. I think we're right to bring some of that manufacturing back to our state and make us a more diverse economy. We historically have relied a lot on tourism and agriculture, and manufacturing is like a hidden gem in our state that a lot of people don't know about, but we're a very growing, section of our economy. And I think there's more to be had there with the manufacturing sector and what it can do for our economy here in Florida.
So expanding manufacturing and bringing that to the states obviously is something that will be focused on going forward. But in the short term, is there anything, there's been a lot of talk about, hey, federal government step in, do something in the short term to get this back on track. Is there really anything in your eyes that the federal government can do?
Well, certainly the federal government's got the power of the purse strings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's certainly things that can be done. I'll speak to the issues that we're experiencing on the West Coast. A couple of weeks ago, I believe, the Biden administration said, okay, now starting immediately, the ports are going to be open 24/7. And I said, okay, that sounds good, and that's great, but realistically, the ports weren't staffed and able to do their work at the current schedule that they had. Now we're just saying, okay, now they're going to be staffed and started 24/7. Is that even realistic?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of complexity there. It's not just getting the ships to the port and offloading them, right? You have to have rail systems, you have to have trucking systems to get those containers then off the ships onto those and over to distribution centers, right? At every step in that continuum, there's issues, right? There's not enough truckers.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough equipment to handle the workload. We can get into why that is in California in particular with some of the legislation that they've passed to kind of hamper the trucking industry in particular in that state.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, again, bringing it back to Florida, we have 15 ports here in our state, right? 5 of which can handle large container ships. So, there's some untapped resources here. I think if you're looking at the system as a whole, yes, there's not enough bandwidth in the system as a whole, but there's also bandwidth here in Florida that's currently not getting tapped into. So, that's where, you've seen in the press where our governor and others within the state have been saying, hey, come to Florida. We're open. We're ready for business. So we're not going to solve all the problems by having ships divert themselves to Florida, but certainly we can add bandwidth to a system that needs bandwidth right now. And our state has that bandwidth. So I think that's an issue. That's an area where we can certainly work with the federal government to see how can we incent those shipping lanes and those the shippers,
yeah,
to divert some of their routes. And instead of going through the Suez Canal and ultimately, they can go through the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal to reach us, right? It's more of a direct line to get into the West Coast. And that's where all that is set up to go through the West Coast. But that's the shortest, easiest path. But is that the best path right now when the ships are sitting there for months, literally waiting to get offloaded? Can we work on saying, hey, you can come through the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, with the expansion of the Panama Canal, it can handle some of those larger container ships. And again, we have 5 ports that can do some of that work as well.
So what would be the pushback and the resistance to do that? It seems like a no-brainer to divert some of those ships to Florida. What would be the pushback to that?
I don't know. There's a pushback at our federal government level. I think that it's just the trucking. The shipping organizations have to just make a business decision to say, okay, we got cargo stuck here. We have, I think there's potentiality of them getting, fined because they're just sitting there offshore for days and weeks at a time. So there's issues with that. Say, okay, does it make more sense to take the slightly longer route? And I know there's fees for using the canals and such, but it's a business decision for them to say, hey, if we can go this path and get our goods to market faster because they're not stuck on the West Coast, and we can come to Florida and get those containers offloaded and off to the distribution centers throughout the country in a more efficient manner, why don't we do that?
Coming up, we'll discuss how the labor shortage is factoring into the slowdown, plus the growing fears about inflation and why it'll likely get worse before it gets better. Stay with us.
This is The Weekly on clickorlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Welcome back. This morning, we're helping you better understand the global supply chain crisis and just how many industries are affected by the slowdown. The cause is complicated, but one of the many issues at play here, labor shortages. Ray Agravir, the president and CEO of Custom Metal Designs, is back with us to explain the ongoing problem trying to find workers.
I can speak to us as a manufacturer. I just attended an advisory council meeting with one of our educational partners just yesterday, And that's what every peer of mine is talking about. We need to get more people, and I'll speak just for manufacturing, but into the trades, right? We have welder shortages, we have machinist shortages, we have all of these needs, and certainly that impacts things as a manufacturing ecosystem, of course. But even at the ports, right? That's what you hear. There's not enough people out there. There's not enough truck drivers out there to get this work done. So certainly the labor shortages and the labor disruptions that we've seen certainly have an impact on our supply chain and the effectiveness of our supply chain, for sure.
The headline, obviously, as you've seen and a lot of folks have seen, is Christmas presents and Christmas in jeopardy and what have you, toys, electronics, sneakers, all of that, backed up and part of this backup. But this is affecting, the scale and the scope of the industries that this is affecting is so wide. It's affecting so many folks and what they rely on just in every day as well, right? Can you touch on some of the other things that and the significant resources that are tied up right now?
Yeah, like you hit the nail on the head. People always think easy, the chip shortage, because we've been experiencing that for over a year now. But now it's everything. There's a lot of food products that come from overseas that people don't realize. The totality of everything that we rely on our overseas partners to supply to this nation. And then when you're having disruptions at the ports and disruptions in that supply chain, now you begin to realize that, I may not be able to get certain food staple items. I may not be able to get my child's toys, my sneakers, my electronic, devices. So absolutely that has an impact. And I think the bigger impact, yes, that's a short-term impact, right? We might have a Christmas that doesn't look like other Christmases from our ability to buy whatever we want. But I think the longer term, could be, are we going to be paying more for a substantially longer period of time to procure these goods, right? That's like, I think the issue that's going to hit most of us harder. Yes, I can explain to my kids, hey, we may not be able to get you this toy and might have to wait till February or March or, but realistically from a budget standpoint and a consumer standpoint, we've seen significant price pressures on all goods. And I personally don't see that stopping anytime soon, and that is going to be, I think, the bigger impact to our economic growth and development over the next, 12 to 18 months is inflation is in my opinion, out of control. And I don't see it waning anytime soon.
As we go back and look at, it seems that the system in place wasn't set up for today's economy, and that's a piece of it, I imagine. But is there a cause of what's snowballed into what we're seeing now? Obviously the pandemic really, turned things on a head, I imagine, in March, April, May of last year. But can you touch on A, the cause, and B, whether or not the system needed to get upgraded and into today's economy before something happened rather than after this has happened? Right.
No, and you're right. That certainly hindsight is always 2020, and the digital economy and the but I think it all boils down to, and I'll speak to just, because I'm a big advocate of American manufacturing, Florida manufacturing, and obviously Central Florida manufacturing. I'm actually involved in different organizations at a national level, at a state level, and at a local level to support manufacturers. I'm part of Florida Makes, which is the national the statewide manufacturing extension partner, MACF, which is the local affiliate of the Manufacturing Association of Central Florida. And the mission of those organizations is to promote and further the cause of manufacturing in our region, in our state, and the nation. And I think that's where we need to look at the long-term solutions. Is, for many years we rely on external providers of a lot of different things, and domestic manufacturing in a lot of areas has dwindled. You talk about the chip shortage, right? We used to make 40% of the chips or more here domestically, and now it's under 10%. And it's those types of things. We're relying on our global supply chain, which for a long time it's been okay, but now when you see issues like this, we see how powerless we are, because we don't have that internal capacity to manufacture some of these goods. And I think that's the long-term play. We've got to understand that, yes, on paper, it may seem a little less, expensive to source something in East Asia or to source something in Latin America, wherever the case may be. But now we're seeing it, right? The cost of producing a good in China is going up, right? As they transition from a export economy to a consumer-driven economy, wages have increased. So that delta and that cost savings that people see and think they have is dwindling, in my opinion. So now is the time to try to be strategic. And how do we bring that capacity, that manufacturing back to America? And ultimately, it's those organizations that produce those items and procure those items need to say, okay, we're going to invest in our domestic supply chain, because yes, we can still probably buy goods a little bit less, costly internationally. But now look at all the issues that we're facing. Some of those issues go away if we bring that supply chain back stateside. So that's, I think, the biggest long-term play that we can do.
What's your biggest concern? This is the last question. What's your biggest concern moving forward, just on a personal level with your business, Custom Metal Designs? What's your biggest concern moving forward when it comes to your business model and really your bottom line?
Yeah, I mean, it's right now it's a combination of labor and inflation. Mm-hmm. We need to continue to develop what I call the next generation of manufacturing workforce, and our educational partners in our region. We have Valencia College, Lake Tech, Orange Technical College, and they're doing great work. But again, they're only pushing out so many students because there's, we've got to really increase the visibility of manufacturing, high-tech manufacturing, and how it looks completely different than it looked in the 50s and 60s. And it's, a lot of it is high-tech, clean manufacturing. So it's getting the young people to see that as a viable option, and then training them to be able to work in those fields. So that's one. And then on the other side, inflation, I can give you a quick story. We buy a lot of metal, right? Our name is Custom Metal Designs, right? So we have 14 gauge steel that we buy, thousands of sheets a year of. Used to cost us around $50 a sheet about a year ago. Today, that same sheet metal, that same piece of metal costs us $250. So, that's a significant increase in cost, right? And what happens, right? We have to charge more for our product. Our customers then have to charge more for their products. And it's just, and ultimately, who pays for that? The consumer, right? So those are my concerns. I think inflation, because obviously there's an elasticity of demand, and at some point the price is going to come such where it's going to, cut demand. So what happens when demand gets cut? Well, the economy shrinks, and those types of things. So those are my concerns. Labor and inflation right now are the two biggest drivers that I'm looking at for my organization to try to solve as best we can.
Now, because of the clogged supply chain, some experts are urging folks to start their Christmas shopping sooner rather than later. But what about sending those holiday packages to loved ones? We have the important dates from the Postal Service on clickorlando.com. I'm Justin Wormuth. Hope you have a great Sunday.